The trail wasn't on the map. Then it was too late. The trailhead sign was old, sun-bleached, and half swallowed by weeds. Still, it pointed clearly enough. Ridgeline Loop, 7 miles. According to my phone, though, there was no such loop. No ridgeline. No trail at all. Just a blur of green where the satellite image gave up and turned fuzzy. Like the map itself didn't want to look too closely. I should have turned back right. Then it was late afternoon when I parked my car at the edge of the forest. The sky washed pale blue with the promise of evening. I had driven 3 hours to hike somewhere quiet, somewhere unknown. I told myself that was the appeal. Everyone else went to the popular trails with their overlooked selfies and snack wrappers. I wanted silence. I wanted to feel like the forest was older than me, bigger than my worries, uninterested in my small life. The air smelled like pine sap and damp earth. The forest hummed softly, wind and needles, something skittering through leaves. I tightened my boots, shouldered my pack, and stepped past the sign. The first mile felt ordinary. Comforting, even. The path was narrow but clear, packed dirt edged by ferns and low shrubs. Sunlight filtered down in shifting patterns, warming my face. Every few minutes I checked my phone, watching the blue dot lag behind my movement, jittery and unsure. No service bars. No trail line. Maps aren't perfect. I muttered, pocketing the phone. By the second mile, the forest changed. The trees grew closer together, their trunks darker, bark ridged like old scars. The air cooled. Sounds felt muffled, as if the forest had pulled a thick blanket over itself. I noticed then that I hadn't seen another hiker. No boot prints. No snapped twigs. No voices carried on the wind. I stopped and listened. Nothing. Not birds. Not insects. Just my own breathing, suddenly too loud. I shook it off and kept walking. Fear, I told myself, thrives on imagination. Give it nothing, and it starves. The trail began to slope upward, winding along a ridge that dropped away sharply on one side. Through the trees, I could see a valley sunk deep in shadow, though the sun still shone above me. My phone buzzed, battery warning. I frowned. It had been nearly full when I started. I slowed my pace, conserving energy, and that's when I saw the marker. A wooden post stood just off the trail, leaning slightly, its top carved with a symbol I didn't recognize. Not a blaze or arrow, just a shape, looping and angular, like a knot that had been tied wrong. The wood around it was darker, almost oily, as if many hands had touched it. I stepped closer. The symbol made my head ache. I blinked, looked away, and the ache faded. When I looked back, the symbol seemed different. Not changed exactly. More like it refused to stay fixed in my memory. Nope, I said aloud, and backed away. I walked faster. The trail narrowed, then split. The left path dipped downward into thicker forest. The right climbed higher, skirting the ridge. There was no sign, no marker, no hint which way was the loop. I checked my phone again. The blue dot spun uselessly. Okay, I whispered. Okay. I chose the right path, telling myself higher ground was safer. Minutes passed, then more minutes. The light thinned, turning gold, then gray. The trees grew taller, their branches knitting together overhead until the sky became a series of narrow cracks. That's when I heard footsteps behind me. I stopped. The footsteps stopped too. I turned slowly, heart hammering. The trail behind me was empty. Hello? My voice sounded wrong, thin and stretched. No answer. I waited, counting my breaths. When nothing happened, I told myself it was an echo. A deer. The forest settling. I turned and walked on. The footsteps returned. This time, closer, not rushed, not heavy, just patient. I broke into a jog. The trail twisted sharply, then dipped, then rose again. My lungs burned. The pack thumped against my back. The footsteps matched me, never gaining, never falling behind. When I slowed, they slowed. When I stopped, they stopped. I didn't turn around again. The light was fading fast now. I rounded a bend and nearly collided with another marker post. This one taller, thicker, carved with the same wrong symbol. And beyond it, the trail ended, not tapered off, not overgrown. Ended. The dirt stopped at a wall of trees so dense they formed a solid barrier of trunks and shadow. No gaps, no way through. I spun, panic flooding in cold and sharp. The trail behind me was gone. Where it should have been was more forest, unbroken, untouched. No path, no footprints, just leaf litter and roots. That's not possible, I said, my voice shaking. That's not. The footsteps sounded again. Right behind me. I turned. Someone stood between the trees. First, I thought it was a hiker. A person-shaped shadow, upright, still. But the longer I looked, the more wrong it became. Too tall, arms hanging too low. The outline blurred at the edges, like it couldn't decide where it ended and the forest began. I couldn't see a face. Just a suggestion of one. Where darkness folded in on itself, that IT took a step forward. The ground beneath my feet felt suddenly soft, like it might give way. I stumbled back, hands flailing, and my heel hit something solid, the marker post. I grabbed it, desperate for balance, and the moment my fingers closed around the wood, my head filled with noise, whispers, overlapping, too many to separate. Stay. This way. You missed it, that I screamed and let go. The whispers cut off instantly. The figure didn't move. It didn't need to. The forest itself seemed to lean toward me, trunks bending just slightly, branches creaking as if stretching. That I ran, that I didn't know where I was going. Left, right, downhill. Nothing mattered except distance. Branches clawed at my arms. Roots tripped me. The forest blurred into a tunnel of motion, and fear. My lungs screamed for AI. My vision narrowed. And then, suddenly, I burst out onto gravel. That I skidded, fell hard, skin scraping, and rolled onto my back, gasping. Above me, the sky was deep blue, stars just beginning to prick through. The smell of pine was gone, replaced by dust and cold stone. A road. That I lay there laughing and crying at the same time until headlights appeared around a bend. A pickup slowed, then stopped. A man jumped out, asking if I was okay, if I was hurt, if I needed help. I nodded. I think I nodded. That he drove me to a ranger station a few miles down the road. They wrapped me in a blanket, gave me water, asked questions. Where had I entered the forest? What trail? What mile marker? I told them the name on the sign. The ranger's face changed. That trail doesn't exist, she said carefully. That I insisted. I described the sign, the loop, the ridge. She shook her head. There hasn't been a marked trail there in over 40 years. It was closed after people kept getting lost. Lost? I asked. She hesitated. Some were found. Some weren't. They drove me back to my car later that night. The place where I had parked was exactly as I left it. Except for the trailhead, the sign was gone. Just bare ground, pressed flat, as if nothing had ever stood there at all. I don't hike anymore. I don't wander off marked paths. And I don't trust maps that feel incomplete or forests that grow too quiet too quickly. Because sometimes, the trail isn't on the map for a reason. And sometimes, once you find it, it's already too late. Weeks passed, but the forest didn't let go of me. 18 night, just before sleep, I sometimes smell pine and damp earth, sharp and unmistakable, even though my apartment sits in the middle of the city. I've checked the vents, the windows. There's no reason for it to be there. And yet it is. Some nights, I hear footsteps in the hallway outside my door. Slow, measured, patient. They stop when I hold my breath, as if whatever is walking out there is listening to. I tried to convince myself it was trauma, stress. My mind replaying fear like a scratched record. I opened the map again. I zoomed in on the exact area where the trail should have been. This time, the green blur was gone. Not replaced, removed. The forest looked flattened, simplified, like a placeholder image. No contour lines. No elevation data. Just an empty shape where detail should exist. When I zoomed out, a warning appeared on the screen. Area data unavailable. I searched online. Old forums. Archived hiking blogs. Buried news clippings. People had mentioned it before, not by name, but in fragments. A trail that only appears sometimes. A loop that doesn't loop. A path that walks you instead of the other way around. One post ended abruptly mid-sentence. The account hadn't been active since. A few days later, a padded envelope arrived in my mailbox. No return address. Inside was a single photograph, yellowed, creased with AGE. It showed a group of hikers standing beside a wooden trail sign. Ridgeline Loop. 7ms. They were smiling. Behind them, between the trees, something tall stood half hidden in shadow. Its outline blurred where it touched the forest, like it was still learning how to be solid. On the back of the photo, written in faded ink, were 4 words. IT remembers the way. I don't hike anymore. I don't take shortcuts. I don't follow unmarked paths. And when a road or trail appears where none should exist, I turn around, no matter how inviting it looks. Because some paths aren't lost, they're waiting. And if you ever find a trail that isn't on the map, ask yourself one thing before you step forward. Did you discover it, or did it find you?